Isn't this a lovely day? The sun is shining, the rads are low, and I even saw June and Marcy not being clinically depressed for a whole minute earlier.
I'll hand it to you. This place isn't awful. It's still a hole, but it could be worse.
I think it might have something to do with that new jukebox that I put together out of desk fans and typewriters. What a marvelous invention that thing is, the jukebox. Pop in your favorite records and you can listen to whatever you like at the press of a button. I gotta say, it really has been uplifting to hear some of my favorite artists on this thing. Billie Holiday, the Andrews Sisters, and yes, sometimes I even enjoy a bit of Roy Brown. All those old-timey songs playing in a world full of nuclear-powered cars, robots, and laser rifles. Somehow, all of this just works. But why does it work? Why doesn't it feel out of place to listen to music from nearly a century ago in a game that's set in the far future? Well, that is exactly what I'm here to answer for you today. What is it that makes the music of Fallout fit so perfectly into the world that we're shown? But first, I'd like to go on a little side quest with you.
My next guest is here to perform a song from the soundtrack of Martin Scorsese's Oscar-nominated film The Aviator.
Let me introduce to you Vince Giordano.
All you preachers who delight in planning the dancing team.
This is an appearance of Vince Giordano and the Nighthawks on Late Night with Conan O'Brien. The man who's currently singing is not Vince. His name is Rufus Wainwright. He's a performer and deserves a whole video of his own. Right now, we'll look at this guy, Vince Giordano. Giordano was born in 1952 in New York. He's a multi-instrumentalist, band leader, and archivist who has spent decades keeping early American jazz and dance band music alive.
Well, I started listening to music when I was 5 years old with old phonograph records that my grandmother had.
If you've watched the TV series Boardwalk Empire or the movie The Aviator, then you've probably heard Giordano's work, even if you didn't know his name.
I formed the Nighthawks in the 75, 76 period.
In the mid-70s, Giordano formed Vince Giordano and the Nighthawks, a band devoted to authentically recreating the sound and spirit of 1920s and 1930s dance orchestras, something that he has led ever since.
And that's from reading the arrangements and carrying music stands and little clip-on lights, so that's when it really started.
His devotion to jazz won him a Grammy Award, and in 2016, he was inducted into the Long Island Music Hall of Fame, alongside greats such as Louis Armstrong and Tony Bennett.
And we had to follow a rock and roll band, and I was so paranoid because, you know, there's young kids and they got all this wild rock and roll that we just played everything fast, and they went nuts, and they hired us back the next year.
There's a moon way up high, here are you, here am I, oh do something. Up and down scales, the ski about the do.
So, what exactly is his contribution to the Fallout franchise? I'm well aware that many of you probably have never heard of this man before, and you likely don't know the first thing about 1920s jazz music. I mean, Nora over here sure doesn't.
I'm not a big fan of jazz. A shame.
The interesting thing is that you have actually heard his work. More than once, probably. In fact, there's a good chance you might even know all the lyrics to one particular song he was involved in making. It doesn't take me more than a second to identify this classic Fallout tune. All I need are the first two notes and I know that's Anything Goes. Out of all the songs that can be heard on the radio in the game, this one I associate most with post-nuclear fun. Because in the Wasteland, anything goes.
Anything goes.
That was Anything Goes by Cole Porter. That was Anything Went. No? No.
Wait, what was that, Travis?
This here, hold please. Okay, it's Cole Porter, I guess.
Right, that song is by Cole Porter and not Vince Giordano. It's a song from the 30s, so like decades before Giordano was even born.
I mean, I would play anything by Cole Porter, but this is Anything Goes by Cole Porter.
Oh darn, what am I even trying to tell you guys here then? Am I trying to sell you guys snake oil? Has my attempt to gaslight my audience failed this early into the video? Well, yes, but mostly no. I know we already are on a side quest, but this other tangent seems awfully enticing to just let go. Let's have a look at how music was recorded back in the day.
Took a walk out in the fens. Had to talk with a man about some cans. He asked me, what's your flavor? I said I need a favor. I'm a little short of caps, but I'm a good neighbor.
When we speak, we push air out of our lungs through our windpipe. There, our vocal cords somehow make that wind sound like speech. Some of us humans have the ability to adjust their vocal cords in such a way that makes their voices sound quite pleasant to listen to. We call that singing.
It's all in a day's work when you're a good neighbor.
Sounds such as speaking or singing can then be captured by a microphone. And that is easy enough for me to say, living in a world where everything has a microphone built into it, from your telephone to your refrigerator. But 100 years ago, making a sound record was a whole process. In the early days of musical recording, musicians gathered around a large acoustic horn, essentially shouting or playing directly into it. The horn funneled the vibrations to a needle that etched the sound waves onto a spinning wax disc, kind of like a reverse gramophone.
The cutting stylus is a minute piece of sapphire, perfectly ground and electrically heated, so there is virtually no resistance as it cuts into the smooth lacquer.
So you can imagine that if the needle was dull or the disc was dirty or someone accidentally bumped into the whole apparatus, the recording came out distorted and the whole disc had to be discarded. Studios back then looked cramped and chaotic. You had the band leaders, the singers, the brass players, the percussionists, all huddled together, trying to balance their sound as best they could into a single horn. By the 1930s, this acoustic way of recording sound had been replaced by the electrical recording process.
This microphone changes the sound waves into electrical vibrations, which are amplified here and sent along these wires to the mixer room,
giving much better fidelity and allowing microphones to capture more nuance.
Sun shines my hot pines for those glasses and cakes. You know that they taste good way down in the cane brake.
Still, songs were recorded live, usually in a single take, directly onto discs. No mixing, no editing. And in 1934, Cole Porter's song Anything Goes was recorded exactly that way, the same year his Broadway musical of the same name premiered.
To go from Reno Sweeney to Lady Oakley, it seems almost impossible.
Listen, honey, nothing's impossible. In this day and age, anything goes. Times have changed.
Anything Goes didn't stay locked in the 1930s. The song became a jazz and Broadway standard performed by some of the greatest voices of the 20th and 21st centuries.
In olden days, a glimpse of stocking was looked on as something shocking. Now heaven knows anything goes.
All of these performances show that Anything Goes isn't just a novelty tune from a bygone era. In a way, it's a touchstone of American music, constantly rediscovered, reinterpreted, and reimagined. And that is exactly what makes its use in Fallout so clever. In Fallout 3, you don't hear Porter's scratchy 1934 record. What you hear in Fallout is something rather unique. In 2004, the Record Corporation of America released the album It's DeLovely, the authentic Cole Porter collection. They took Cole Porter's original 1934 vocal and piano performance of Anything Goes, and Vince Giordano and the Nighthawks overdubbed a brand new, period-accurate dance band arrangement around it.
In olden days, a glimpse of stocking was looked on as something shocking, but now God knows.
It feels vintage, but it's also crisp and alive, recorded with modern fidelity. And that is the exact hybrid recording that Bethesda licensed for Fallout 3, Fallout 4, and Fallout 76.
Anything goes.
So, when you're trudging through the Capital Wasteland and 3 Dog drops the needle, or holotape, on Anything Goes, what you're really hearing is Cole Porter in 1934 and Vince Giordano 70 years later. 2 eras stitched together to become the soundtrack of a future that never was. You know, I do like Travis. He's always got such nice music playing for us. But to be honest, despite the nice selection of tunes, I can only listen to his hacking and slacking and whacking so many times. On occasion, I like to turn off my Pip-Boy and, just enjoy the other side of Fallout's musical identity. When you're roaming the wasteland, whether it's the irradiated ruins of Washington, D.C., the lonely, dusty roads of the Mojave Desert, or the bewitching streets of Boston, you will always have at least one companion: the score. Every Fallout game takes place in a world devastated by nuclear war. A war that ended centuries ago, leaving behind nothing but dust, rubble, and jagged rebar jutting from the earth. The great American cities that once were have been reduced to ashes. Those lucky enough to hide in vaults had a slim chance at survival, but for everyone else, life became a daily fight. You, the protagonist, exist in this lonely and dangerous world, never knowing if a toppled skyscraper is truly empty or crawling with ghouls and mutants ready to tear you limb from limb. Never knowing if you can safely drink that sweet, sweet nectar of a crusty toilet, or if it'll blow up in your face. You're often alone, yet constantly on edge, and that feeling is underlined, sometimes even heightened, by the musical score. The first Fallout games, Fallout 1 and Fallout 2, built that atmosphere with a score composed by Mark Morgan. Sparse, desolate soundscapes filled with droning winds, Geiger counter clicks, distant, ghostly sirens. The music itself feels irradiated, haunting, bleak, and in a way, inescapable. With Fallout 3, New Vegas, and 4, composer Inon Zur carried that tradition forward. His work is eerie, metallic, and cold, reflecting the shattered world around you. So, whenever you're alone, exploring the wastes, the score constantly reminds you where you are, and that danger is never far away. And then the score transitions into an action piece, and suddenly you're fighting a Deathclaw with nothing but a 10mm pistol. You know how some games always try to be super gritty and serious all the time? so they never stray away from their orchestral score. Like in the Metro games, for example, they always play their sinister cinematic soundtrack to make sure that you don't forget that you are meant to be frightened. A great orchestral score is fine, don't get me wrong, but Fallout doesn't just stick to atmospherical soundscapes with tribal drums and mechanical noises. Since Fallout 3, every major entry has paired the score with a licensed soundtrack, pulled straight from the golden age of American popular music. Like anything goes, as discussed earlier. The world is burned, broken, left for dead, yet from a rusted radio, and please forgive me for this, you'll hear a cheerful voice singing, "The grass is the springiest,
the bees are the stingiest, the birds are the wingiest."
It's a complete juxtaposition.
The heart's
the singiest,
the
arms the clingiest.
The wasteland may be nothing but rubble, radiation, and raiders, but echoes of the old world are everywhere. Faded billboards still advertise the latest nuclear-powered cars complete with chrome and tail fins. Homeless housekeeping robots straight out of a 50s comic book shuffle through ruined streets still complaining about dirt. The pre-war world of Fallout has a retro-futuristic touch. The games may take place far into the future, but the future of Fallout is still the future imagined by someone out of the 1940s and 50s. The bombs may have fallen in the year 2077, yet instead of flying cars, holograms, and sleek cybernetics, we see atomic-powered robot servants, hulking computers with CRT screens and Nixie tubes, and everyday people still wearing petticoats and colorful suits. Much like 1950s America in our own timeline, Fallout's pre-war world was steeped in sugar, capitalism, and boundless optimism. And nothing captures that better than the music. The songs that spill from your Pip-Boy or from a wandering iBot are relics of that era. Warm, cheerful voices echoing across a cold and dead landscape. Music out of time, mocking the player by its very contrast. One of the best examples comes in the opening of Fallout 3, as the camera pans out to reveal the burnt ruins of Washington, D.C. The ink spots croon, "I don't want to set the world on fire." The irony is immediate and unforgettable, because the world has already burned. And that's Fallout in a nutshell. You might walk into a collapsed diner staring at the skeletons of its long-dead patrons, while malt shop tunes play happily in the background. And it's this fusion of deadly seriousness and whimsical nostalgia that gives Fallout its unique identity. Life or death battles often tip into dark comedy when your laser rifle reduces a hulking mutant to a pile of glowing goo. And that's the secret ingredient. Even in the grittiest, most desolate corners of the wasteland, Fallout's music always injects hope and humor. I Don't Want to Set the World on Fire, Rocket 69, Grandma Plays the Numbers. It isn't just a funny coincidence that the music in the HD era Fallout games so often sparks humor or underlines the irony of whatever strange situation you might stumble into. The licensed tracks in those Fallout games were picked deliberately and thoughtfully to not create a realistic alternative history atmosphere, but to instead paint an idea. Now, what exactly do I mean by that? To answer that question, let's look at how other games handle period music.
In the month of May.
Take the Mafia series as an example. The 2020 Mafia remake does an incredible job of recreating Depression-era Chicago. The car radio plays authentic tunes from Duke Ellington to Cab Calloway and other legends of the time. Between songs, you'll hear advertisements, weather reports, and news bulletins. All that to make the world feel alive and historically grounded.
A large storm front, not expected to arrive for several days, hit Lost Heaven late this afternoon, releasing a deluge of rainfall on the city. If you've been out in the last couple of hours, you don't need me to tell you.
And even though the plot, the people, the locations do not exist in real life, we can still identify the world as a snippet of our own. And then there's Mafia 2, which essentially does the same thing, but this time it's the 1940s and 1950s music. And Mafia 3 does it again, this time in the 1960s, with a soundtrack full of soul, rock, and protest songs.
10,000 students, some armed with automatic weapons, were confronted by a massive force of 5,000 soldiers.
In this case, every entry to the series uses music as a sort of time machine, carefully tuned to the real world's cultural moments. My favorite game of all time, LA Noire, does a similar thing. A detective story set in post-war Los Angeles, drenched in period-accurate swing and jazz music. Its soundtrack doesn't just include period songs. It also features authentic radio broadcasts, like episodes of the Jack Benny program or the Charlie McCarthy show, vintage commercials that make you feel like you're truly driving through 1940s Los Angeles.
What?
All these games share a common goal. They're trying to recreate the past of our own history. Their soundtracks are historical photographs of our own timeline, musical snapshots of the real world as it once was.
I'm satisfied just to be at your side.
But Fallout isn't our own history. Fallout isn't the future, but robots and 40s songs. See, if I wanted to make a historically accurate 1940s game, all I would have to do is look up the 1940s Billboard music charts and I would be done. Fallout, however, does not do that. I don't know how familiar you are with the songs that typically get chosen for the Fallout games, but most of them are popular songs from yesteryear, that is true. However, there are also lots of songs that are pretty niche and obscure even for that period and genre.
Stop talking about him and talking about him and talking about him and talking about him until your face turns blue!
There are some really weird and wacky songs from that time. What initially prompted me to even make this video in the first place was my own personal love for jazz music. So take it from me when I say that the 1920s, the 30s, and the 40s were all about theatrics. Lots of music of that era was often created specifically for movies or for stage plays, and therefore possess a certain amount of absurdity. And it's exactly that subgenre of music that Fallout likes to tap into.
I do believe, yes, I believe, that old man Moses dead.
Fallout doesn't show you the 1940s. It shows you what people in that time imagined the future would be like. It's a world built from optimism, style, and paranoia of mid-century America, filtered through satire and then blown apart by nuclear fire.
Isn't that a sight to take your breath away? Wouldn't that new beauty steal any show?
And that is why Fallout soundtrack gives you songs like Anything Goes, Crawl Out Through the Fallout, or Grandma Plays the Numbers. They're not there to replicate the past. They're there to remind you that Fallout's world is a caricature, a reflection of what the future once looked like to a culture obsessed with progress, prosperity, and the looming fear of nuclear annihilation. I'll assume that most of you watching this video have absolutely no idea who I am, and that makes perfect sense since my last upload was, let's see here. Some time ago. I stream over on Twitch. Games, art, that sort of stuff. And during one of my streams, a viewer told me that they were also playing Fallout 4, and that they are excited to play it, and that they have already downloaded 100 gigabytes of mods. Being the pure-bred vanilla player that I am, I asked, why so many mods? And their response made me chuckle. They said they like Fallout, but they wanted, and I quote, modern guns. Now, by all means, everyone should play the way they want to. I'm not here to criticize anyone who enjoys squeezing 500 mods into a game. But all I could think in that moment was, modern guns? Really? To me, that just wouldn't feel like Fallout anymore. And I thought about that conversation after the stream and still came to the same conclusion. Now, I'll admit, I am the type of player who likes to keep things mostly vanilla when they play a game. Whenever I see the top-rated mods on Nexus, things often look off to me. For instance, a sleek, handheld version of the Pip-Boy already breaks the illusion for me. I need that big, clunky CRT wrist computer. It's funny, this idea of immersion and how fragile it is. What even is immersion? Besides a word that we toss around whenever something in a game feels right or doesn't feel right. In 1997, the author Janet Murray published her book Hamlet on the Holodeck, The Future of Narrative in Cyberspace. She describes immersion as the sensation of being submerged in water, completely surrounded by a medium that envelops your senses. As the title of the book suggests, Murray drew inspiration from Star Trek's holodeck technology, a room capable of projecting fully interactive environments and stories.
Incredible.
Step inside and you can become a soldier in a war zone or a secret agent saving the world. For Murray, immersion happens exactly at the point that the boundary between reality and fiction dissolves. When you stop playing and start being inside the story.
That would be, you must be very embarrassed by this program. I'm not embarrassed. I'm annoyed that you have intruded into my privacy.
And I gotta be honest with you, for me, music is one of the strongest tools for creating that exact sensation. More than graphics, more than gimmicks, Fallout's music in every installment does an incredible job of immersing you, mirroring not only the tone, but also the texture of its world perfectly.
Begin again in the night. Let's sway again tonight.
Take, for example, Fallout New Vegas. Unlike most Fallout games, Fallout New Vegas does not start in a vault. It begins with a cutscene in which you're tied up, staring down the barrel of a gun, and getting killed. By all logic, that should have been the end. But a friendly robot digs you out and delivers you to a dusty town doctor. He fixes you up, and when you finally step outside the house, the world greets you, not with music, but with silence. Tumbleweeds roll past. The wind kicks up sand. A rusted sign creaks in the distance. You, my friend, are in the West. And if you came straight from Fallout 3 into New Vegas, expecting to hear the familiar sounds of swing and jazz music of Galaxy News Radio, then you're in for a surprise, because one of the very first side quests literally has you fixing the radio for the local saloon's owner, Trudy.
Which clearly trivializes the switch from popular swing and jazz crooners to lonesome country and western rangers.
From the first steps outside of Doc Mitchell's house, New Vegas feels different from Fallout 3. You're standing in a sun-bleached desert, surrounded by ruins, sand, and the occasional deathclaw that once you did. The roads stretch endlessly, an eternal traffic jam of rusted cars frozen in time, each one a monument to the world's end. You are the courier, moving from one half-dead town to another, chasing down the man who done you wrong, the guy who shot you in the head. You take odd jobs, meet drifters, and make choices. Every dusty road, every crooked horizon echoes the imagery of a classic Western movie. The lone gunslinger against a lawless frontier. Now, New Vegas isn't quite Red Dead Redemption, but it has the same spirit. Grit, independence, and quiet melancholy. The difference is that Fallout filters it all through atomic age kitsch. The result is something unique. A retrofuturistic nuclear western told through swing guitars, country ballads, and twangy love songs playing on half-broken radios. It's the Wild West after the end of the world. In this way, Fallout New Vegas sets itself apart from the other Fallout games that came before it and after it. In fact, if you start paying attention more closely to the music, it becomes obvious that each installment in the series has its own musical language, its own musical dialect. All of the Fallout games share the same universe, the same atomic age optimism and the same retrofuturistic lens. But each region speaks its own musical language to tell you its particular corner of the post-war world. Where New Vegas is full of grit, lonesome roads, and cowboy swagger, Fallout 4, for instance, leans into the absurdity of 1950s rock and roll, giving you tracks like Rocket 69, Uranium Fever, or Atom Bomb Baby to make you chuckle. Even Fallout 76, flawed as it may be, gives the Appalachian wasteland its own voice. Bluegrass, folk, gospel, and Americana drift out of every broken radio and abandoned jukebox, making you yearn for the mountains. This variation isn't just good world building, it almost feels like a sort of homage to the way music actually worked in mid-century America. Okay, hear me out. Today, if you turn on the radio in your car, you'll hear the same 10 songs played on repeat in every city across the country. Unless you dig deep for those tiny underpowered stations, radio has become homogenized background noise. But now imagine for a second that you live in the 1950s. There is no Spotify, no YouTube, no algorithm that carefully determines whatever mood you might be in. Your media diet is strictly limited to movies, maybe television, and, of course, the radio. And that radio is local. If you were from Chicago, you were raised on cool blues and deep horn jazz. If you lived in the Southwest, it was country ballads and cowboy songs.
The stranger there among them had a big orange on his lip, big iron on his hip.
If you grew up in New York, on the other hand, you heard the sharp, intellectual edge of bebop, Dizzy Gillespie, Charlie Parker, and the whole artsy-fartsy club scene. Wait, bebop?
Swing, I can understand, but this bebop palaver? How are you supposed to dance to that?
Every region of America has its own musical identity. Fallout honors that. It remembers. And here's why that's so beautiful. For many players, Fallout is their first introduction to the great music that their grandparents listened to. Legendary artists like Duke Ellington, Cole Porter, the Ink Spots, Billie Holiday, and Ella Fitzgerald, they all live on. Not just in dusty records, but in the imaginations of gamers stumbling across an old radio in a broken diner. Even modern artists, like Vince Giordano and the Nighthawks, carry this music forward, reframing it through a new lens for modern audiences while staying true to the spirit of that era. Fallout doesn't just borrow old songs. Fallout preserves them. Fallout teaches them. Fallout makes them feel alive again in a world where everything else is dead.
Have those tears and those rocks in my heart.
We began this video with a jazz musician you might never have heard of, Vince Giordano. a man who has dedicated his life to keeping the sounds of a distant past alive. And the more time you spend in the wastelands of Fallout, and the more you spend listening to the world, the more you realize that the series is doing just the same. Fallout resurrects the music of a bygone era, not as museum pieces or dusty relics, but instead as living, breathing parts of its own world. The songs aren't just stitched onto the game, they shape it. They give the wasteland soul. Each game speaks its own musical dialect. The capital wasteland croons with big band elegance and wartime optimism. The Mojave hums with desert ballads and cowboy melancholy. The Commonwealth dances between romantic crooners and ridiculous atomic age rock and roll. And Appalachia echoes with bluegrass and gospel lifted straight from a porch in the mountains. Together, these soundtracks form something bigger than nostalgia. They become a kind of cultural memory, a memory of a future imagined by the past. Fallout's world is bleak, irradiated, and often cruel. But the music is warm, the music is hopeful, and the music reminds you that humanity once dreamed of better days. It is that contrast, that collision of ruin and romance, that makes Fallout unlike any other post-apocalyptic game. Without the radio, Fallout would just be another wasteland. With it, the world becomes something poetic. So, the next time you're wandering the wastes and an old radio crackles to life, stop for a moment. Listen. Because in Fallout, the bombs may have fallen a long time ago, but the music never stopped. You've made it to the end of the video, and I appreciate that. I have never made a video like this before, and it took quite a while to make, so please let me know what you think down in the comments below. Maybe even hit that like button and subscribe to my channel, it would mean the world to me. I also stream on Twitch, so you can come in and say hi if you like. You can imagine that by using all this licensed music in this video, I will have triggered more than a dozen copyright claims. But I don't care about that. I just hope you enjoyed the video. Oh, and one more thing. I recorded so much footage of Wasteland Vistas that I thought it could be cool to put it all together into one long compilation. The link to that is in the description below or in that iCard thingy. So, thank you so much for watching. This is Mr. Trashcan, signing off. Am I trying to snell? Cole Porter's Anything Goes was first recorded that every Fallout game. Nomads wander the wastes, raiders prey on the weak, and you will hear a cheerful tune singing, fuck. I Don't Want to Set the World on Fire by the Ink Spots, Rocket 69, Rama, Glamma, Shmama, fixing the radio for the local saloon's bar owner, Trudy. The saloon's bar owner? What's that? In this way, Fallout New... It becomes more obvious that each installment has its own musical language, its own dialect. Excuse me. And here's why that's so beautiful.